Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We're gonna wait till 2 o'clock to get started, just in case there's anyone else that will be trickling in. So we'll give them another minute or so. Okay, hi everyone. It is 2 o'clock, so we are going to get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live webinar titled How to Create Dashboards and Reports for Real World Scenarios with Wine Enterprise. My name is Summer Ripple. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Wine, and I will be your host today. We also have Brandon Borabong, our wine product consultant, who I'm sure many of you have interacted with before. He will be our wonderful presenter today. Before we get started, I do have one housekeeping item to go over. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions throughout, please feel free to enter them into the chat. We will not be answering questions during the webinar, but instead waiting until the end to cover all of them. Well, that is all from me for now, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Brandon. Brandon, take it away.
Sure thing. Thank you, Summer. Can everyone hear me, first of all? Make sure I'm loud and clear. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for joining me today on our webinar on how to create dashboards and reports for real-world scenarios with Wine Enterprise. My name is Brandon, and today I'll be exploring how Wine Enterprise can help you gain better insights into your data. Before we get started, I want to do a little thought experiment with everybody. Imagine that you have been asked to create a dashboard that looks visually striking while being dense with information, and creating a transactional report that shows the data behind the visuals. How long do you think that will take? Maybe a couple hours, half a day, even a full day or more? While you think about that, allow me to explain today's agenda. In this webinar, we'll be exploring a common use case of creating an interactive dashboard linked to a filtered report based off of a shared dataset. Before we get started, we will first do a quick run through of the platform. We will create a dashboard that looks a little bit like this. We will have a report that looks like this, and we will join them together using a jump to. At the end, we will have 15 minutes for a Q&A. So as Summer mentioned, please send your questions in the chat and we will address them at the end. So without further ado, let's get started with a high-level overview of the Wine Enterprise platform. When you log into Wine, you may notice you have three portals: the document portal, which we're currently looking at, the resource portal, and the admin portal. Well, let's go to the document portal. This is a landing page once you log into your Wine Enterprise server. The document portal provides a quick view of the dashboards and reports that are available to you. The Favorites tab on the left here is what we're currently looking at, and it allows you to see all of your favorite documents in one place. The Categories tab organizes your documents into different custom categories. And the Create tab allows you to create a new dashboard or report. You could also filter your search here by going to the filter options right there on the search bar. And you can access documents in a single click by clicking on the name. You can also open the context menu to duplicate, rename, or delete a document or add it to a category. You also may notice we have two other options on this left toolbar: the data monitoring and the recycle bin. The data monitoring can be added as an add-on to your Wine Enterprise license, allowing you to get notifications pushed to your Teams, Slack, or email channels whenever a data point passes a certain threshold. And your recycle bin can be enabled in your admin portal, allowing you to recover any recently deleted documents that you may have accidentally deleted. And you can also set how much time before that item is permanently deleted. Now, moving on to the resource portal, we can click on these four squares at the bottom left to switch to portals and go to the resource portal. This is where your developers will have full access to all the documents in Wine. It has all the document types, as well as the same navigation buttons as the resource portal. However, the Create section is much more in-depth, allowing your developers to create the data sources, data sets, and data models that will accompany your documents. The resource portal and the document portal are similar in the way they both allow access to documents, but the document portal is a more limited version of the resource portal, which may be ideal to use as a customer-facing portal, while the resource portal may be where your developers work. And finally, the admin portal is where you can manage Wine settings, import or export documents, download log files, and more. For today, I'm going to be jumping around the document portal. So let's circle back to that thought experiment. Let's add some more details to that. Consider you are working for an insurance company, and your boss has just informed you that you need to provide a comprehensive dashboard that summarizes the finances of the company, shows the average amounts of premiums and payouts by region and month, breaks down customer satisfaction, and also shows how many days it takes to settle a claim based on the type of vehicle that is being insured. This dashboard is required within the next hour for an emergency stakeholder meeting. And the kicker, there needs to be a report attached to the visual that shows in-depth data about the payouts versus premium amounts for specific months. Now, you might be thinking, how could I possibly create an interactive, visually impressive dashboard with all of these features and a dynamic parameterized report in under an hour? But if you're a Wine user, you don't break a sweat because you know that Wine empowers you to create these powerful dashboards with automatic calculations in a short amount of time. And with easy to set up jump to interactions, you know that a deep dive report, complete with all the company formatting you need, will be ready in less than 30 minutes. So let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to do is create the dashboard. In order to do that, we will need to go to either a resource portal or a document portal. And since we're a business user, we already have the data available to us. So we don't need all the functionality of the resource portal in order to develop a data set or a data model. Therefore, we can stay right here. We can work on a document portal as I'm going to do right now. So let's go to create and we can create a dashboard and double click blank dashboard. Once you open the dashboard designer, you will notice that it's designed similar to a Word document. On the left, you have your tools. On the right, you have your properties. On the top is the menu bar, and the middle is the design area. This makes it very intuitive and natural for any user to pick up and begin designing things. So let's show that. Let's begin by adding a title to the dashboard. We can click on this data visualization section and come down to the rich text. We can drag and drop it right onto our design environment, and there we go, we have a text box. So let's name this something like car insurance dashboard. I'm going to double click and I can change the settings using this toolbar on the top, or I can use this properties panel on the right. So let's start with the right. We can go to a center align horizontally and a middle align vertically. And this font is definitely too small, so let's bump it up to 3.0 and we'll make it bold. We can drag a corner of this to easily change the size of this box, and there we have it. We have a title. Now, let's add some visuals. The goal of any dashboard is to provide a summary of the data that also aligns with a clear point. The point of this dashboard is to show stakeholders that we are profitable and customers are satisfied with us. So for the point of proving profitability, I'll want to use some KPI indicators, maybe some graphs like a line chart or a bar chart, and the KPI matrix to show some payouts per region. And for the point of proving customer satisfaction, we can implement a radar chart. So to start, we'll begin with the KPI charts by adding them to the top of the dashboard right underneath the title. These will be able to show the stakeholders at a glance what metrics we are currently meeting. And we could also beautify them a little bit to make them more relatable to what the viewer will understand them as. So I just dragged and dropped the KPI chart right to the design environment. On the right, you notice that it automatically switched to the data binding tab. So let's go ahead and bind our data. And for this first KPI, we will want to do the days to settle claim right here. And notice that it automatically aggregated to the sum. Now, that's over 2.5 thousand, so I'm going to actually change that to an average. And I did that by clicking on the gear icon and going to the aggregation method. I could also, in this section, rename this so that it is a little bit easier to read. As of now, this is days to settle claim as one word, and it's a bit lengthy. So I'm going to change this to AVG for average, days to settle. Now I could drop another KPI, or if I want to save some time, I can Control C or copy, and then Control V or paste, and I can bring those same settings into my next KPI chart. However, for this one, I'm going to want to do the average of a payout. So I'm going to delete this value here, drag and drop payout right into the box. See how it highlights orange, letting you know that it will be accepted. I will change it to the average for aggregation method. And we will rename it while we're here as well to AVG payouts. Now, if you're looking at this, you may notice there's some things that are wrong. For the format of the number, it's not a currency, and 1.5K is not very descriptive. We would like to see the actual dollar value. In order to change this, we can click on these three dots here, and we can first go to data format. We can go to currency, and now this number will be formatted as a currency. And we won't want any decimal places, so I'm going to bring it to 0, and our symbol is a dollar sign. That's correct. We will press OK. Now notice it's showing 2K. Now this is most likely a rounding to the nearest thousand, as Wine is doing for us. We can change this from auto, which it is currently set on, to none. And there we go. That is the actual value. Notice that it's almost $500 different than what it was previously showing. So that was definitely a good decision to make that into a none display unit. I can Control C on my keyboard and Control V once more, and I can copy this KPI chart again. This time, I will want to change the average payouts to the average premium amounts. I'm going to change the aggregation method to average and rename it as I did for the others to AVG premium. And there we go. Notice that it did not have to go through those same settings because they are already incorporated from the previous, since I copied and pasted, saving me just about 30 seconds, but 30 seconds back into our pockets. Next, we're going to want to do one more. I'm going to grab this one here, Control C and Control V at the end, because this one is not going to be a currency. It's actually going to be the average customer satisfaction score. So I'll delete this number here, and we'll get the CSAT, which stands for customer satisfaction. We will change that from sum to an average, and we will rename it to customer satisfaction. Okay, and there we go. We have the makings of our dashboard, but we're definitely missing some things. Let's add some charts to give this dashboard some more visual appeal. We will start with a visual to demonstrate the customer satisfaction. Now, I know my customer satisfaction has scores that range from 1 to 5. This makes it ideal to place on a radar chart, with each point making the shape of a pentagon. Now, if I go to my data visualization section, I notice I have two radar charts, a regular radar chart and a filled radar chart. I will be using a filled radar chart, as the extra use of color will add some flair to the visual and help drive the point home. So drag and drop it there. And on the data binding, I will use the count of policy number right there. Drag policy number, change the aggregation method to count. And on the axis category, I will do the customer satisfaction labels right there. And there we go. This provides a visual, but it's missing some key things. First, notice how the visual is not sorted. It's going from average to excellent to fair to good to poor. The category values are not in any type of order, which detracts from the ability of this visual to provide information at a quick glance. So let's fix that by adding a sort. We can go to this toolbar right next to the visual, and the button of the A to Z is the sort. We can click and then add a sort. Now we have different options, but for this one, we can just do a manual sort. And in a manual sort, you can just pretty much move these around so that they are in the desired order. So I just changed it from excellent to good to average, fair, poor. Perfect. I can press apply and OK to exit out of it. And now notice how our visual automatically changed, and we can easily see that the majority of our scores are average or above, with the minority being poor and fair. So that's a pretty quick understanding that we're doing kind of well with customer satisfaction. This visual packs a punch. So let's move on to the next visual. We will add a line graph to show a time series. This will help show our stakeholders how much payouts or premiums came in each month. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a line chart onto this empty space, and I'm going to expand it to the right. On the x-axis, or the category, I will do the claim payout by month. So I can grab that here and drag it. On the y-axis, or the values, I will do the average payout, and I will grab that there, change the aggregation method, and there we go. And I will also add another y-axis value to show the average premium amounts. Grab that, drag and drop, and change the aggregation method to average. And I can also rename these, as I have done for previous, to just payout and premium. Notice that when I change these, the legend reflects that, as well as the title. But I'm mainly changing these to show the legend so that it's not such a large amount of space taken up. And we'll change that to premium. And notice that the space was instantly reduced, allowing for more space in our line chart to express the data that we're trying to show. Okay, now you may notice that these colors in this graph are so close that we can't really tell easily which line is which. I mean, they're both blue, there's a different shade of blue, but it's very hard to tell. Now we can certainly go in and change the colors for this specific visual by going to the palette. And we can change between a standard palette, a theme palette, or a custom palette. Or we can choose to change the colors for the entire dashboard from previous items we've worked on to the future ones by going to the top menu bar, clicking on Dashboard, going to Theme, and picking one of the themes here. Now let's see, I think I know a good theme, and if I scroll around and find it, let's try the utility. There we go. Yellow and blue allows us to quickly see the difference. And if you notice that maybe this legend is not correctly reflecting the respective line, all I have to do is drag this and bring it to the top. And now blue is on top and orange is on bottom. So that clearly demonstrates at least the legend, but we're still having some trouble discerning the data points on this bar chart. I mean, we can see that it's rising and it's falling, but what about the actual values? And all this empty white space underneath payout. Maybe we can bring this down and be able to see these uh, rises and falls a little bit clearer. So we can go to the inspector tab here and we can change some of these settings to make it more readable. So we can change the minimum value by going down to the value axis and setting this to 1000. And there we go, our y-axis now begins at 1.0K. We also set the format of this because this is supposed to be a currency. So we can change the format in this value axis section from general to currency. All right. Now, what about seeing each specific point on this chart? And right now, some of these are, maybe you can see them, but they're so close in terms of the angle that's changed, maybe you can't tell what's happening. So we can set a setting called show symbols to true. Now, I could scroll around and find it, and if I'm very adept, I'm sure I can find it quite easily. Or I can use this search bar on the top and type in data, and there we go, show data label, set it to true. And then we can also set the symbols to true so that we have a nice little ball at each point, just like that. Finally, we can edit the name of this entire visual by going down to the title, and we'll call it Premium and Payout by Month. Now, there's one thing left that's wrong with this visual, and you may have noticed it already. The months are completely out of order. It goes from April to August, February becomes before January, and July comes next. And we can fix this by doing the same sort we've done for the radar chart. We can add a sort, and we can completely go to the manual and unjumble this, or we can use Wine to automatically decipher which one should be in which order. If we have another field that is a date field that is linked to each of these values, we can simply sort by that. And I do have that. I have a claim payout date that goes by month. And all I have to do now is press apply. And there we go. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. And a little bit too small to see the other 2 months. We can just expand that so that we see them all. I can zoom out a little bit so I can get some more room to work with. And there we go. Give a little bit more so November isn't so close to December. And then we can move these over a little bit as well so that they are nice and centered. And we're going to zoom back in. All right. So now we have our time series. And I think it also quickly expresses the points that we're trying to convey. So let's move on to the next visual. We have some data on this dashboard that shows the premiums and the payouts. We have customer satisfaction, but it's not immediately obvious where the differences in the values are coming from. Do some age groups, for example, have higher payouts than premiums? If so, I'm sure the stakeholders would be interested in this data, but so far it's not discernible. To fix this, let's add another chart to compare those two values. One of the best charts to compare values is a bar chart, so let's add that now. Click onto the data visualization section, click column chart, and drag it right there. On this bar chart, we will add the premiums and the payouts to the values. So premiums and payouts. And we're going to keep these as sum for now. And the age group will go onto the category axis. So we're going to grab the age, or rather age group, and drag it onto the category axis. And notice now we have two bars, one for the premium, one for the payout. And we can rename these so that they don't include the word sum and they are correctly spaced. And we're just going to rename this one too to just payout. Actually, I'm going to change this one so it doesn't even have the word amount because I think that is implied. So premium and payout, perfect. Now on this graph, we're going to want to change the title because age group is not spaced correctly. I'm just going to go over to the title, add a space, press enter, and now we have a space. All right, that was easy. Only thing we may want to do now is change the y-axis so that it's a currency. So we're going to go to the axis value and change the format to a currency. And there we go. That is all done for that visual. Really quick and really easy. You can even line it up so that it fits directly underneath my radar chart because the next chart we're going to use is actually going to be the same size as this chart right here. In fact, it's going to be so similar, I'm going to want to just copy and paste it. So I'm going to press Control C or right click, and then Control V or right click and press paste. Now for this visual, we will want to utilize the claim ratio data. The claim ratio in the context of an insurance company is a key financial metric that represents the ratio of claims paid out by the insurer to the premiums it collects. So it's typically expressed as a percentage, and a lower claim ratio indicates that the insurer is effectively managing its claims relative to the premiums received. So as I mentioned, to demonstrate this, we're going to use a line chart to show these claim ratios over a time series. Now, will need to delete these from the values, and we're going to want to add the average of the claim ratios to the values. So I will go down to claim ratio, and we'll change that to a average. Now notice that the y-axis is still going up to 1,000. So I'm going to have to change that by going back to my min value. I'm just going to type it into here, remove that, press enter, and we're doing a little bit better, but still we have our currency setting from the previous bar chart. I'm going to scroll down to the axis value, change the format from a currency to a percentage. And actually, while we're at it, maybe I won't even show the axis at all. It is implied that a percentage will go from 0 to 100, so we don't need necessarily to have this axis altogether, so we can just remove it. Notice that the numbers that we're showing are really big and are not being expressed as a percentage. What I can do now is go to the data format, and I can change this format number to a percentage with 1 decimal place. And there we go. And let's see, is there anything else? We're going to want to change the title of this to average claim ratio by month. And we can make this a little bit more spaced out so that we can see the values completely. Oops. All right, and I'm making my bar chart to match. Now, let's add a KPI matrix. We want this KPI matrix to show the average payout per region. And this will help our stakeholders understand which region brings in the highest premiums. So we can add a region and a policy type to the rows once I add it. Region at the bottom, and policy type, both to the rows, and the average of premium amounts to the column. And we'll change that method to average. All right, now you may notice off the bat, we have something with our visual here. Let me zoom back in, maybe a little bit too small. So our KPI matrix is showing as this column is just called number. We can change the name of this column to average premium amount so it will reflect the value in it. And we can do that by going to this section here where it says number. A little pencil icon will appear allowing us to edit the name, and we can change that to average premium. Okay, and we can change the display unit of this one to none, showing an exact value. And we can change the format so that it is a currency with no decimal places. Perfect. And next, we will also want to add a diagram to this KPI matrix. For the diagram, we can add premium amounts by quarters. So we'll go to the value premium amounts, keep it as a sum for now, and we'll go grab a quarter from the payout date and drag that into the category. If we expand this a little bit, we can see the entire diagram. And if I would like, I can change this to an average still, and we can see a little bit better what's going on per quarter. All right. One last thing I may want to do for this is change the title. As of now, it's very long, and we will call it Regional Premium Amounts. All right. And for the diagram, we can actually change the name because it's actually still named diagram. And we can call this premiums by quarter. And we can expand that again. All right. Now, for the last visual to round this dashboard out, we still haven't used any information about the car types. And that's quite important. So let's start with a visual to compare the amount of days to settle claims based on the car type. Um, bar chart would be good for this since readers typically read from left to right, I'm going to utilize a horizontal bar chart to make that visual flow happen. So we'll add a horizontal bar chart here and drag it out so it takes up the empty space. And for this one, we will want to add the average number of days to settle a claim. So days to settle a claim to the value, change it to average. And we can rename it to help beautify the text. Average days to settle. And then in the axis category, we can add the car type. And we could also rename it to add that space. All right. This visual is now functional, but maybe not technical enough. So let's add one more field to take this chart to the next level. We can utilize the region, which is another field we haven't used in the legend or the series. Well, what that will do is that will create a legend and split the data up into all the regions that are available in the data set. So we have rural and urban regions, and now we can easily see the average amount of days it takes to settle a claim for each vehicle based on the region. And we will change the title as one last thing for this. Visual to average claim settlement days. All right, and that will complete our dashboard. You can zoom all the way out, give it a preview, and there we go. So we can go back now and save this dashboard. And press OK. So now we need to get working on the report. So I can close this out and I can immediately go right over to create report. And we have a couple options here. So we have an RDL report and a blank page report. In a nutshell, an RDL report will grow with your data, and a page report is defined by the formatting limitations that you create. Each have their own use cases, such as an RDL report is good to show transactional data, and a page report is good to show or create letters and things that are very well formatted. For this example, an RDL report is ideal, but we can take it a step further and we can use the RDL report template. Since this is a transactional report, but a template is going to pre-format that header and footer for us. So all we will have to do is customize the template to change the logo and the title. So I have here organization branded report underscore RDL. I'll double click on it. And here we are. I can change this logo so it matches our car insurance logo. I'd have here, if I go down to Safe Miles, there we go. I can change the company name to Car Insurance Report. And this one's going to be filtered by month, so I'm going to add that into the title. And we'll leave the execution time and the page numbers on the bottom. So when you first log into the report, you may notice that it's very similar to the dashboard designer. We have the same settings on the left, the top, and the right. So we can go right into it and jump into the data binding. When you first get in, you will have to add a data set. So we can press add here, and we can find the same data set that we used in our previous dashboard. Now I can go ahead and add a table and drag and drop items into the table and do this just like that. But that may be tedious as I may have to add rows, columns to the left or the right, and that may take a little too long for me. What I'm going to do is click on this little checkbox area here, and that opens up checkboxes next to all of my data. Now I can select the data that I want. So I definitely am going to want the premium amount and the payouts, but I may also want the policy number, age, car type, region, policy type, and the claim ratio, as well as the month name. And now that I have selected all of these, I can drag and drop, just like I did in dashboards, right into my design environment. I can squeeze these in so it fits onto one page, and that should eliminate the second page from my design environment. Okay. And for these, we can reorganize the column order by selecting the area above in the white and dragging it left or right. So we can keep policy number in the front. We can go to car type. Let's move this right before age. And then before age, you actually may want to put region there. And then we'll keep age right where it is. We'll put policy type after age, payouts, premium amount, claim ratio, and a claim payout month name. And then we can rename all of these so that they include necessary spacing. Also increase the height of this row so that we can see everything going on. Call that car type, region, age, policy type needs a space. Premium amount needs a space. And I could actually just go ahead and delete the word amount from this. Claim ratio can delete that number and add a space. And this can just be called month name or month. All right, there we go. And if we preview, we have it all right there. Now, this report, while functional, it's not quite doing what we want it to do yet. We want it to be linked to the dashboard based on a selection that is made, and then only that data for that selection is shown on the report. In order to do that, we need to add a parameter to this report. So we can go to parameters right here on the data binding tab and press add. We can click on this parameter here, and we could rename it or not. I'm going to leave it as parameter 1. I'm going to keep it or make it a multi-value parameter. And the available values is basically what options you have to pick from for this parameter. You want the months, so let's go ahead and pick that. Go to claim payout month name. We'll do that for both the value and the label. And that should be it. You can go back. And now that we have a parameter, we need to bind it to the filter on the table. So what I've done is I've clicked on the entire table. I clicked on these 4 arrows on the top left, and that brought up the table settings. On the table settings, there is a filter section underneath data. If you click add, you can add a filter against the month name. You want to change this to in because it is a multi-value, so you want to make sure it's inside that set of data you're sending, and make sure it's in the parameter selection. So if we were to preview, we get a parameter 1 as our first option, and we get some months to pick from. So say I pick January, and we'll do another month just to make sure that the multi-value is working. When we click preview, we are now only seeing data for those months. All right. Now that we have the report, we can save it and call it car insurance report for webinar. And we can close it. Now, if we go back to our dashboard that we have just made right here and go back to edit, we're going to want to create a jump to on one of these. So I'm going to do this chart right here. I can click on it and I can scroll down on the right until I find jump to. Add a jump to by pressing the plus sign, and we'll have to add some names. So do jump to report by month, and it is going to jump to a report, so we'll change that on this bullet icon here. We'll find the document name. So it was car insurance report for webinar 01. And it's going to ask you, because this report has a parameter set up named parameter 1, what value do you want to send when you jump to this report? Now, we know that the value that we're going to send has to be a month. And we also know that our bar chart we're currently working on has a month on the x-axis. So the value type is whatever value that we select, send the month name of that selected value. Okay, so I have that as the only selection that is checked now, the month name, and I press OK. I'm going to open this in a new window and press OK. And now if I preview and I make a selection for May, June, July, and decide, let's see a report on these 3 months. Maybe, data kind of stagnated on our premiums, but our payouts were a little bit different. I want to see what's going on those 3 months. Let's jump to the report now. And May, June, July are now available here. And that's it. Now that we have a dashboard, we've created a jump to that opens a report in a new window, allowing us to see some of these values. We are done. To do the jump to, we can add more options as well. So we can jump to on any of these visuals to a new report. And we've covered how to create a jump to for a report, but you can also jump to a dashboard. And in future webinars, we will be going through a lot more in-depth information about this. We've kind of just scratched the surface of the functionalities within Wine. So there is upcoming webinars that I hope you guys will be joining as well, where you can see a lot more of the functionalities that are available. But for now, we will be going into our Q&A. So without further ado, are there any questions from the chat?
Brandon, thank you for that. Yeah, I don't think there are any questions in there right now. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to enter them to the chat and we'll get to them. Since we don't have any right now, we did get some from attendees prior to this session. So we'll just dive into those if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. Let's hear 'em.
Okay. All right. First one. Could a dashboard visual showing the high-level data overview allow me to drill to the transactional data behind the chart?
Yes. So this question, I believe, is asking if we're going from maybe something on the time series like viewing each year. Can we go down from the year maybe into the quarter, and then from the quarter say, oh, there's an outlier here, let's go into that. Go into the months, and then from the months find, oh, there's another outlier. Go into the weeks, and then even the day. And then from the day, can we jump to a report? And the answer is yes, you can. We can provide a sample of that functionality if you send an email to the Wine experts, which is shown on this slide here. But you can definitely take a jump to from different levels of your data, and you can what's called drill down into that data before executing that jump to. So yes, you absolutely can.
Okay, great, Brandon. Thank you. So we did have some questions pop into the chat. We have one from Elizabeth, two actually. In addition to Wine documentation, which other sources of information can I consult for report creation?
Yes, so you can export documentation for sure, but we also have samples that are available on our website that show different functionalities in the reports. And you can find our website here on this slide, https wine.meshias.com. And you can go to the samples section there. We also have blogs that go through how to make many different kinds of reports. As well as if you install the trial edition, there are pre-installed reports and dashboards on there that allow you to play with them right on your machine. And you can see what settings are enabled to allow for certain functionalities. And you could always reach out to the Wine Expert team if you have any more questions specifically about how to implement certain functionality.
All right. Next, we have what is the correct syntax for using the expression editor?
So the expression editor in the reports, it's going to be a language that we have for ourselves. And you can find information on that on the Wine documentation website. But it is very close to what you may find in Excel, but it is not quite. But we can definitely show you the information on our documentation and give you guys a clear understanding of each of the functions that are used. But I'll go ahead and show you as well on a report. If I wanted to do any editing, let me exit out of here. This was a jump to, so I'm going to close this. I'll save real quick. But when working on an expression in a report, you also have the editor that shows you each of the functions that you can do. So if I click, go to the expressions here, I have all of these functions that show you on the right the information behind it, how it works. So it's almost like you have documentation right on Wine itself that shows you everything that's available to you, an example of how it's used, the syntax to use it. So Wine is very powerful in that regard and when it shows you everything. But there's also documentation. If you want more information on that, just reach out to the Wine experts and we'll definitely provide you with that as well.
Okay. We have another one from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you for all these great questions. Is it possible to use the data from a sub-report in the main report, for example, to perform an aggregation function?
To use that data from the sub-report to the main report will be a little bit trickier. It depends on how your data is set up. If you're using the same data set between the two, you certainly can. If not, you may need to have something that links the data sets together. That's just a common field. There's also many different methods. I have to understand more about the use case that you're trying to use because there may be a better method to do what you're trying to do. Subreports, for example, can be a little bit performance heavy. You may be better using a table inside of a table. But that's something that I believe will be better if we take offline and we can definitely explore that use case through email and I can understand specifically what you're trying to do and suggest the best practice for it because there is a little bit of nuance in that I think we should address.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. I think those are all from the chat right now. So if anyone else has any, feel free to enter them. We do have a couple more that attendees had sent before. My users may want to look into different reports based on each individual visual. Can I set up Wine dashboards to link to multiple reports from the same dashboard?
Yes, so you can have multiple data sources for each report or each dashboard. It's not so much specific to one. So a report can use many different data sets. Um, and as long as there's a field bound between, you won't have a problem. If there's not a field, you may want to do something to connect them. And that's one of those nuanced things that Elizabeth kind of asked about. If there's no common link, then there may be something you can do to get around that. But for dashboards, if you're using multiple data sources, then for each visual, it can only take one specific data source. If you have multiple visuals that have different data sources on the same dashboard, you will have to go through what is called the interaction settings. And I can show you that quickly now. So on this, close out of this, go to our dashboard. So interaction settings are shown by this. It looks a little bit like a paperclip, but it's actually chains. And what it does is it links our visuals together. So I just clicked on it, and if I select one of these, notice how everything kind of changes. Basically, in a nutshell, what this is showing is that when I change something on the visual that I'm currently selected on, any visual that has this icon will be changed as well. And this goes backwards and goes forwards, as if this visual can also change the visual that I'm currently selected on. Now I can change this so that maybe I only want it going forward and I don't want it to change it backward, or I can take it off completely. But there's actually a couple different icons you can see. You won't see them all because I'm only using one data set. But if I had multiple, there would be different things you can do and settings for you to adjust in order to make that work the way you want it to. We can share a knowledge base article on that if you have any more questions, and that knowledge base article goes through every single icon that you can possibly see and what they mean and how to make the different data sets work in a single dashboard.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Okay, the reports we use have dynamic filtering for various different variables. Can Wine reports take in multiple filters?
Yes, yes. So you can have multiple parameters that will be, maybe for that car insurance report, if you wanted to filter by age group as well, on top of the month, and maybe on top of that, we only wanted to see premium amounts that were above 3,100. We can implement all three of these parameters, and we can link them to the same filters area where we bound the first filter that I showed you guys. And you can have as many filters as you want, as long as they're bound to a parameter, and then that parameter will prompt the user to select one of the options, and then the parameter goes to the filter and tells the filter, show me the options based on these choices that were made. So yes, you can implement as many filters as you want. It does not have to be only one.
All right, great answer. Okay, just a couple more questions. Are reports customizable to match my branding and embed directly into my web application?
Yes, so you can upload your own logos. If you saw that I had a plethora of logos on my report, you can upload your own, and you can upload your own theme as well to make the dashboard and report fit your business styling standards. We have also samples of how to embed wine, that those are available on our GitHub, and those are and to embed either the entire wine portal, including the resource portal, document portal, or to just embed the report designer or the report viewer or the dashboard viewer or designer. So you can pick and choose which parts of wine you want to white label, and we have documentation that is very extensive on how to do that for certain aspects of wine. So absolutely yes.
Awesome. Okay. Can I create and use calculated values in my reports that I don't have in the data source?
Yes. So you can create or implement calculations at any level of wine, whether it be the reports or the dashboards. I showed you the reports through the expression editor. The dashboard as well can take in calculated fields and calculated columns, allowing you to work with your other data, add an expression to it, save it as a new column in your data, or if you just want to do maybe a static value for something, but you can implement calculations at any level of wine, so report, dashboard, data set, or data models. And these calculated fields and columns allow you to create these calculations right on the report itself if you like.
Okay. Two more questions. This is last call for questions in the chat as well. I currently have 1,000 users. Each of them should only be able to access data that is relevant to them. Can Wine support this?
Yes, so we call this multi-tenancy. Um, any part of wine can be used multi-tenancy. So the reports, the dashboards, the data sets or data models behind them, and the data source can be multi-tenanted. And this is done through the use of user and organization context. Basically, you set up a context value for the user, and that is basically used as a variable inside of their data source, data set, data model, report, dashboard. And that variable is going to be used to filter. The same way that I use a parameter to filter, I can use a context value to filter. And I can do this at any level of line of the data. So it's quite easy to use. If you have any specific questions about it, we have a lot of great documentation on how to implement multi-tenancy. We have some samples of it as well through a blog post. So you can follow it step by step. And we're always happy to assist with that question over email. You send it to myself or wine.experts@meshius.com.
Okay. All right, Brandon, last question and then you can breathe. My data currently sits on multiple different databases. Can a report or dashboard be connected to multiple data sources?
Yes, that was similar to the previous question where we can just use the report can use as many as you want. It definitely helps if they have a common field that can be bound, especially if you're going to be using one to maybe dictate another field, another one. It definitely helps that they have a common field. But if it's a dashboard, each visual will take one data source. But if you have multiple visuals with different data sources on each of them, use the interaction settings. and that'll get you to where you want to be.
Okay, great. Well, that's all for the questions, Brandon. Any last words?
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned before, we've only scratched the surface of what One Enterprise can do. So we're going to do more webinars in the future that are much more technical and that get into more unique but also common use cases that people may find themselves in. So stay tuned for any notifications from our marketing team. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, brandon.borbong@meshes.com. You could also CC our support team at wine.experts@meshes.com. If you're looking for any documentation or the samples that I was mentioning, our website, wine.meshes.com, will be there for you. And if you're interested in getting a license, getting a trial, maybe a demo of some of these features, reach out to our sales team at wine.sales@meshes.com. And yeah, once again, thank you everyone for joining. It was a pleasure doing this webinar for you all.
All right. Well, a big thank you again to Brandon for the wonderful presentation and for answering all of those great questions. Just so you all know, the webinar will be available to watch at any time on our YouTube channel under the Live tab, as well as on our website under Webinars. We'll also be sending out an email with a direct link to it as well. So that's it from me. Thank you all again for attending, and keep an eye out for upcoming webinars from the Wine team. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.